So thank you, everyone. Today is November 5th, 2025, and this is Prime Hour. It's lovely to see everyone here. Thank you for being on time. You know, Prime Hour is time to speak. So put yourself off mute and join the conversation. This is a time for us to connect, to share, to build community. And as we're building community, please use the chat right now and share with us where you're calling from. And if you feel comfortable, please share your contact information or at least your LinkedIn profile. One of the things that we love about Prime Hour is to make connections, make communities. So if you feel comfortable, please put there where you're calling from and also your contact information of some kind, so people can continue the conversation after we are done here today. So we are going to have a conversation here. We sent out an email, and what Amy and I would like to talk about is a topic of one of the episodes of Prime Space. How many of you listen to Prime Space regularly? No pressure. So I love that you do. Prime Space is the podcast for Prime, the official podcast for Prime Coaching Academy. We try to release episodes every weekend, and some of you have been or are in the process of being guests at the podcast. So if you have something that you would like to share with the community, connect with me. I would love to have a conversation with you at Prime Space. So a few weeks ago, I released a podcast, an episode that was called How Personal Can I Be? And it is one of the most listened episodes of the season. And let me give you a little bit of a story, and then I'm going to give you the microphone for you to answer that question. But the story is that I was having a conversation similar to this. It was a much smaller group of coaches. And one of the coaches brought this situation where he was having a conversation with a client in the middle of a session, and he felt compelled to share something that was personal to the client. And everything was fine, no problem at all. But then after the session was over, he was like, did I share too much? Is this okay? Where is the line? How personal can I be? And we discussed in that conversation with those coaches. And I thought, this is an interesting topic that perhaps we should discuss during Prime Hour, because I think that perhaps you may have thought about that question as well. So what do you think? How personal can we be with our clients?
I'll start it off, since I had it just last night. And I actually heard your voice echoing in my head because it's about the client. So that was the thing that went through my head. But I still did share the personal connection point with the client, and I felt like it was appropriate because it really gave, I think, him the perspective that I actually had been there before too. And I think he gave him affirmation that he wasn't like dealing with some unique one-off situation. So, but I did make sure to pause first and say, okay, am I am I making this about me all of a sudden? So I think there's a balance of doing that, but I think it's part of the relatability piece to coaching, I think.
Fabulous. And thank you for sharing with us an experience that you're having with a client. Anyone else? What do you think?
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I agree with Mark, but I try to avoid it because it's kind of it's easy to go there sometimes, and I feel like it can be a bad habit to get into. And but I think also like I coach a number of people I've coached for a long time. So you have this built up relationship that goes beyond the session. And so sometimes it's weird not to share something, I find. So that's another sort of little test that I look for.
I love that. You were bringing up something very important for us to be mindful of. Am I relying on that? Not only on the sharing, but on any specific tool. Am I relying on that too much to the point that it has become a habit? That is something for us to reflect on. Like, is this something that I'm always going in that direction? Is this something that I need to reframe, pay attention? And at the same time, I love what you're saying here, John. You have built a relationship with this other individual for a long time. It's kind of almost inevitable that there is an understanding and there is a knowledge of who we are because of the exchange that we have done throughout the years. Yeah. Michelle, you were going to share something.
Sorry, I was gonna say that for me I feel both ways about it, right? Because I think it can help to establish trust and establish and create security for your client, especially if it's something, particularly where they feel alienated or, need to relate to someone. But I think the other side of that is how do you hold yourself, or how do you make sure you're being objective and not applying your own lens, even on the type of questions that you're asking? So I think it's a tough question for coaches. And the other thing is sometimes, like I've been in the situation where I choose not to share, but then they'll say, they'll ask you directly, a question, where which kind of commands you to share or wants you to share. And then if you don't share, then it feels like you're kind of breaking that connection a bit. So it's, mixed feelings on it. I don't know that there's a right or wrong, but I think the bigger question is, how do we know as coaches that we're not applying our questions or even interpreting the information through our own lens? And so unless they give us feedback on that, or you have your session with your mentor coach within the session, how do you manage that?
So I guess that you're giving us the old answer that we give to most coaching questions. It depends. Right?
Well, that's a safe answer, or the politically correct, probably. But I have shared, and I think it's allowed for a powerful connection at times, very powerful. But I always am mindful, am I seeing it through my lens, or am I applying any undue influence?
Let's keep that in mind, because I think that what you're sharing there is very important here. What is the lens that I'm using here? What is helping me to make a decision to go there or not? I love that. David, and then Vicky.
Yeah, I raised my hand when you said the depends thing. I, of course, get the joke, but unless you're taking a credentialing exam, and then it does not depend. But that's just a little bit of on the nose humor. I'm studying. In a week from now, I'm taking my credentialing exam, so I've got all these things in my head back and forth. And while I think for me, the studying for the exam has made it infinitely more clear, sort of the levels between, let's call it an entry-level coach, regardless of your life experience, and the nuance as you step up, because I find myself understanding everything that I think I need to understand, but there's this constant combat in my head between being client-centric versus sort of what we're talking about right now. So I get the nuance that it should benefit the client and all that. But when I go through and take sort of a mock exam, a lot of times I find myself on that razor's edge, and I'll tip myself, towards being client-centered and come up with the wrong answer, for example, right, on a nuanced question like this. So it's more anecdotal than anything else, but it's just a general comment that I've noticed. And I guess as you deepen your experience and skills, then you get, it becomes more, my point is, it becomes more obvious and less mechanical where you know, what knife you use to slice that cake. So that's my 2 cents.
100%. I love that. The idea of the artistry. You know, there are so many nuances in coaching. That's why the "it depends" is the default answer for coaching questions, because in coaching, it's never black and white. It's not this and that. And that is the challenge that has always been of credentialing standards, because, and if you talk with Carrie Abner, the vice president of credentialing standards, she will say this all the, you know, very clearly. We have a very subjective process that needs an objective assessment. How do we balance that? And that has always been the struggle with credentialing standards to this day. And I don't know if we will ever solve that issue. But anyways, Vicky.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity and the question. That's provocative, I think. So what was coming to mind for me, I was calling to mind an example when I had to share something that I felt was on the line. And what guided me through that was thinking, okay, this is going to be something that could negatively impact my client if I don't share. And specifically, I was having some health issues that made me showing up at my best self very unpredictable. So one day I would be fine, another day I wouldn't be. And I found myself saying, okay, I just need to disclose and let them know what's going on and give them informed choice about how we handle it. And so that was really hard. I was incredibly pleasantly surprised at how people took that, and with a lot of grace and gratitude. So
that was the curiosity, like, how did they take it, you know, once you shared something that it was personal, and you answered that with grace. Isn't that beautiful? To me, it shows trust in the client, trust that the client can handle, you know, a piece of information and handle it in an adult manner. That's the question that comes up for me. Do I need to always be managing it so much? Or can I take a step in trusting that my client is adult enough and responsible enough to handle that piece of information with grace? That's beautiful. Thank you for that, Vicky. Noel. Hello, Noel.
Sorry, couldn't come off mute.
Where's the mute button?
I know, where's the mute button? How are you? Mine's, I was trying to think of how to say this in short. Mine's a little different, but it hit me a little different, I should say. I think as my coaching evolves, I actually listened to your podcast about following rules a while back, and I'm trying to move a little bit away from the rule following that we learn in coaching. And one of this, where this really hits me recently, is when you said the word personal, I actually didn't think about sharing personal stories. I thought about Brene Brown's doing a podcast right now with Adam Grant on empathy. And what I've been wrestling with is like the word they use is enmeshment. So knowing where you end and someone else begins, and really fine-tuning that in your work. And I thought, gosh, I work in healthcare, so that really resonates there, as well as coaching. And so for me, that's where this question hit me, is, you know, personal just doesn't have to mean sharing something personal about you. It can mean how engaged do I get in this conversation? You know, being careful not to slip down the slope of enmeshment with someone else. So that's what really stood out to me when you asked the question. Yeah, so.
Fabulous, fabulous. There's all of these nuances, these details. That's why we are bringing up this question here for us, because it depends. And there are so many of these points that we need to consider in that moment, that perhaps there is something that came up Should we share? Should we not share? What do we do in that moment there? And I love this concept of like, is this the enmeshment, right? That you said of between where do I start, where do I end, and where does the other person start? That's a beautiful concept there for us to keep in mind. Thank you, Noel. Joe.
I love how these tend to line up. I'm right there with Noel, and I've been big on distinctions lately. And so I was just trying to think through, and I'm wondering if anyone has any other interpretations of what this word personal means. So, I mean, yeah, sharing personal experience to the point that it's helpful or maybe related, connecting to a more personal topic. So if the coaching topic has something to do with something that's quintessentially personal, you know, leaning on the relationship, that so there's like the distinction of enmeshment, Noel, right? Versus we've developed this trusting bond potentially, and each client, you're going to have a different version of that. How do we make the most of that? How do we make sure we're not taking advantage of that in a negative way? And then I heard another one was disclosure in service of the relationship. And that can be personal. I've got a health challenge or something that might get in the way, or inquiry for that matter. What's going on with you that you're showing up this way? So I don't know if anyone else, or Elias, Amy, you guys have other ideas as to what personal means, but those are a few that are showing up for me.
What does personal mean? And then we are going to go to Eric.
I'll jump in because you asked, Joe. To me, personal means I'm revealing something about myself that might be vulnerable, a vulnerable space. That's what it means to me.
It seems to me that in coaching, personal is just any time you are bringing yourself into the session, whether it doesn't even have to be that vulnerable.
I love this, that there are different levels of vulnerability, of openness that can show up in that situation. Yeah, I love that. Anyone else? So, Mr. Eric. Hello.
Hi. I was going to say very quickly, the thing that I keep thinking about as everybody's commenting is it in service of the client? Whatever that you are saying, is it meant to serve the interest, the possibilities of the client? And if that's the guiding light, if that's the guidepost, then I think there's room for and benefit in sharing with the client something that's personal. Obviously, I think that there are guardrails, and there's going too far. But I think that's the guiding light. Is it in service of the client?
And I think that is the crucial point to answer this question. This idea that everything that we do in a coaching conversation is for the client. The client is in the spotlight. So if I share something and the spotlight comes on me, that's not helpful, because then all of a sudden I am the star of the conversation. The client needs to be there in the spotlight at all times during a coaching conversation. And if I decide to share something, is to the benefit of the process, is to the benefit of what is happening with the client's processing of that in that particular moment. So if it's going to contribute to that process, if it's going to contribute to the client's development, to the client's exploration, and if it's going to support the relationship so that there is more trust and safety, that the client feels more at ease, that the client is able to open up even more, why not? Why not be able to share that? And then of course, there are all of the points that we need to be mindful of. how much are we sharing, how much time are we spending, what is the language that we are using, what is the timing, all of this, the language that happens around that, which are all of the other skills that we do for whatever we are, whenever we are interjecting in a coach conversation, applies to this moment as well.
Yeah, I was just, oh, go ahead, Amy.
You go ahead. I'll go.
Sorry, my camera's not working. This is Beth. It's interesting. I just had it just this morning. I was coaching a new client, and I coach internally. So I'm a PT, he's a PT, having a real significant struggle and not getting a lot of feedback. And I kept thinking, is this to help him, or is this to put the spotlight on me? And it really was like just a really brief kind of a, this is not just a you thing. Like, I think he needed to hear that, because there's, other issues too. It's not just development. Some of it's, work related and performance related. And really, I really wrestled with it. And hearing this all helps me kind of put that back into perspective, which is, it was for him. And it was actually not, it wasn't about me at all. It was about maybe a similar struggle a lot of therapists have, or a lot of healthcare workers have. So it's a very timely conversation.
Thank you for that, Beth.
Yeah, I'm going to roll back what I was saying. When I was, and still am, maturing as a coach, but 30 years ago, I did struggle with this a lot. And one of the ways, the lens that I looked through it, because it was also the time that I was raising my fees, the lens I looked through was, if I'm going to spend 5 minutes talking about myself or revealing something personal about myself to the client in service of the client, will the client see that as a good return on their investment? I looked strictly through a financial lens at that. Because I thought, all right, if you, for example, you're charging $250 an hour, every minute is $5. So if you're going to take 5 minutes, that's $25 of their investment. Would they see it as a return on that investment, what you're sharing with them? And I think some of the things we've brought up here today, like Mark, you brought a real good point up, is helping people feel like they're not alone, or normalizing something, or whatever that is. That, yes, that's certainly, it helps the client move forward. It helps them break through to the next level of understanding about themselves. But looking through that financial lens allowed me to remove my own emotional self from it. Mm-hmm. My, crippling self-critic. That would be like, no, you're just you bubbling all over the place, because that would probably happen if I was having that conversation with myself. But then to say, is this a good investment for the client? That helped me tremendously.
One thing that we need to be mindful of is that we are always sharing something personal with our clients. Just the fact that we showed up and our face is here, that is personal. That's my face. And the choice of clothing that I have, that the hairstyle that I have, my eyewear, my eyeglasses, whatever you call this, and whatever is in my background, all of this are personal choices that I made that show to the client who I am. So it's not that I'm going to disclose, my all the skeletons that are in the closet, if there are any, or, all of the personal stories. Maybe there is a space for that. And I can see that even in my experience as a coach, that there have been moments that I shared things that were very personal about myself with the client, depending on the situation. But we are always in exchange with the client. Coaching is a human-to-human experience, and we connect with the client at a human level. So it can be right just by saying, I understand. When we say that I understand, for me to say that I understand, something that the client is saying relates to something that I have experienced. So I am in just that statement, I understand. I am sharing something personal with the client, and I am creating some sort of an empathy, showing empathy there. This question of how personal can I be is very much related to core competency number 4, cultivates trust and safety, especially sub-competency 4.6, which says a coach, a professional coach, a professionally trained coach demonstrates openness and transparency as a way to display vulnerability and build trust with the client. This is in our core competencies, okay? So this is in both 2019 and the 2025 update of the competency. We have this sub-competency there. Demonstrates openness and transparency as a way to display vulnerability and build trust with the client. When I read for you this sub-competency, what comes up for you?
Anything is possible. Yeah, I
How
mean,
can you elaborate on that, David?
yeah, no, that's just what we've said. It's just so nuanced, right? You need to find your way and navigate your way through. This is probably related, but I don't know. I'll just share what's coming up for me as we talk about this topic, which is I so appreciate the space we have conceptually to talk about these things in a place like this. I've also come to appreciate the value of letting it all go the more I step into a coaching session so that I can get out of my head, which continues to be, I think, the evolution of like, we give space, we think through what's right, what's wrong, what's within the parameters, how do we interpret, these guardrails or areas of guidance and mull them over, and then how do we just let go and be human and be present and recognize the patterns of our own growth in the relationships with our clients over time, and then be able to take a step back and to assess, did it feel good? Did it feel right? Did it not feel right? So I don't have all this to say I'm taking you inside my head, which is I love the deep thought, and I also love getting more comfortable just stepping outside of it altogether and just being present with the client.
Yeah, definitely. These are big words that the competency challenges us with: openness, vulnerability, transparency, and I like to add the word authenticity. Right? We are called to be vulnerable, to be transparent with our clients. What does that mean?
Well, I don't know fully why our brains work the way they do all the time, but it doesn't seem instinctive that when we ask for help or we show vulnerability, that it would build trust. But in the right doses, in the right situations, it seems to. And that's a leadership principle. And I think that's a huge principle in coaching. And so just like you gave the example, Elias, of saying, I understand. How about I don't understand? I'm not picking up what you're putting down. Help me out here. Something like that. So I don't know. So in terms of building trust.
100%. I love that you flipped that on the I don't understand. The bottom line is the transparency. It's the authenticity. I do not understand. And being sincere with the client, having the courage to be open and transparent. That is so beautiful. I appreciate that so much. Stephanie and then Cindy.
Yeah, very similar to what Joe was saying. Also, I think that it's about we are coming into it as a partnership with our clients. We're expecting them to be vulnerable and transparent. And so partnership, in this case can mean, so are we then. So I think it's, role modeling that behavior also to them when we're expecting that from them as well.
That is like it's music to my heart, Stephanie. I say this all the time. How can we expect our clients to be ready and courageous to explore who they are, to be vulnerable, to stretch to areas where are not comfortable. My coaching is always challenging them to see things differently, to look through different perspectives. That is vulnerable. They are putting themselves in a vulnerable situation. So how can we expect the client to do that if we are not ready to do that ourselves? That's a great, great question for us to be mindful of. Cindy.
So coming into a coaching session, we are to be partners. And so if I look at myself from a personal perspective as a partner, it is equal and it is vulnerable and it is transparent and it is authentic. And that's what I want, or what I want to be as a partner. So trying to pull that in, but still hold that professional space of knowing my role. The big part of my role, still being a partner, is setting the framework and making sure that we get through the coaching session in a way that it stays focused on the client, but it's done. To me, that's where that professionalism comes in. And I think that personal piece is all of what everyone is saying. Always trying to make sure that it is focused on the client, but I think we can get lost sometimes too if we start sharing too much personal. So it has to be done with balance.
100%. There is a fine line. This is not a chit chat between two friends. We are a professional and we are providing service to our clients, and this is the client's time. And that's why at the beginning I said that the differentiator here is this to the service of the client. It's not for me, it's not my time, it's not my spotlight. It's the spotlight is on the client, and I am there providing service to the client. That is a crucial aspect of this. This is still a professional engagement. Thank you for that point. Yeah. I have a question. What is the meaning of vulnerability?
For me, if I am to feel that I'm being vulnerable, I've let down all walls. There is no protection. It is just truly being fully there, seeing me 100%, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever. We can protect that and still do it in a nice way, but I think without being fake, without adding something more that or with even holding back, like you can't even hold back with that. It's there. And it's okay to remember that we can make mistakes, we can be with the person, but we want them to be able to do the same for us.
Thank you, Cindy. Blake.
I think this just adds on to what Cindy just said, but I think it's exposing yourself in a way that subjects you to potential ridicule, judgment, or hopefully kindness and care.
So there is the kindness and care too. Yes, I love that, Blake, because we oftentimes relate vulnerability to I'm putting myself vulnerable so someone can attack me. Well, someone can offer grace too and love, right? Like how that's one key ingredient of a solid relationship, is that we are able to accept being loved, right? That's not always a hard thing to do. Eric.
Well, I kind of approach this from one of my background is in collaborative negotiation, and so I address this from a negotiation standpoint. And in any negotiation, there's something incredibly powerful in exposing yourself to risk, not in necessarily taking on the risk without any sort of exchange, but being open to the idea that you would be willing to take on some risk if there's some mutual exchange. And I feel like in vulnerability, that's exactly what we do, is we go first and we say, I'm willing to take on this risk if we can take on this risk. And there's something powerful in a relationship when that happens.
Ah, beautiful. David.
Yeah, I look at vulnerability as a lever. It's the opposite of being guarded, and I don't put any emotion or judgment around it. That we might need 10% guardedness and 90% vulnerability, or whatever permutation that you might want, but it's not really binary. You're not either vulnerable or guarded. Sometimes there's these recipes that make the perfect, cake in that moment that you need to eat. So that's how I look at it. And I don't expect somebody, I guess I don't expect it to be like on or off. You're not either vulnerable or you're not. There's this gradient to it. And so I appreciate even 1% of vulnerability for me. That's enough to say, okay, I can work with that.
Oh, I love that. I love that gradient idea there. Joe.
I'm going to hire David to do some emotional regulation coaching for me. Because on the opposite, seems like there's almost always an emotional component to vulnerability for me. But I just wanted to acknowledge that someone brought up, who was it, Noelle earlier? Someone brought up Brene Brown, and she always talks about how vulnerability isn't there without courage. And so then Eric talking about power and just kind of and David talking about levers. It's like, what are we using that power and those levers to do? Right. And I think if it's to increase the spotlight, to be courageous enough to make the spotlight even brighter or more revealing for the client, seems beautiful.
I love that you paired vulnerability with courage, because oftentimes we tend to think traditionally that vulnerability means weakness. And Brene Brown did many studies on this, and she is an advocate of this idea that for us to be vulnerable, it's the opposite. We need to be strong and courageous to be vulnerable. And she also mentions that vulnerability is not necessarily disclosing information. Vulnerability is a state of being, is how we show up. And therefore I can be here vulnerable, but I don't necessarily need to be sharing details of my life history to expose myself or to spend time about this. It's a sense of openness that we bring to a relationship, to a moment where we're ready to receive, and we're ready to connect, and we are ready to engage. That is vulnerability, right? And again, I'm going to share this, like just the fact that we turn the camera on, it is a step of vulnerability. I'm going to let you see me, right? So there are different levels of vulnerability, as David said. Can be 1%, can be 50%, can be 80%, maybe 100%. I don't know. Yeah.
There's a component here too about a level of detachment of how we are perceived. We're not trying to manage perceptions one way or the other. And there's vulnerability in that, because look at everything we do, from how we style our hair to the glasses we wear, where we live. Everything is to manage perceptions to some degree. It's just in our nature to do that. But I think when we're truly vulnerable, we detach completely from that, of how we're perceived, and we just are.
And this is one point that I'm making in the episode, if you have not listened to it, is the whole aspect. I spent quite a few minutes there of the episode talking about managing perceptions. That a lot of times we are not vulnerable, or we choose to create this stance of, I'm the professional, and I am all the put together, and I have all of the right questions, And because we are in this, we put ourselves in this space of managing perception because we are trying to create value. You know, like how is the client going to perceive me if I am vulnerable, if I am open, if I am spontaneous, if I am authentic? What is the perception? The client may not take me seriously. So I need to create this persona, this image to manage the client's perception. How is that affecting the human to human, the building trust and safety, the space for true exploration? And then we complain that the client is not being able to go into the who. Well, they're not seeing our who because we're managing perceptions. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I totally get it. I mean, this, again, for me, my experience, it goes back to the idea of getting out of my own way when I'm in that hour and trying to put aside everything that we've been studying and learning and focusing on. And some days are great, and some days I feel too mechanical, you know. But it's the effort in reminding myself that it's me being human first. You know, I've got all this in the background somewhere that's presumably working while I'm engaging with the client. If I can trust that I'm human first, I'm likely vulnerable and just showing up as me. Those are the engagements where I get off the call and feel like that was great. I know they got, I mean, I trust that they always get value out of it, but those are the ones where I feel like that made a difference.
The invitation to be human, right, to the client. The idea that, no, I am not perfect. I'm a human being just like you are. It's a huge gift that we can give to our clients, because then they can start having the courage to see themselves as human too. And that's okay. But when we are managing perceptions, then the client sense that, and then they are going to manage perception too.
I like to think about it as a way to connect deeper at the human level, but without our identity. So if we were to strip all of these identities that we hold, and multi-layered for most people, and we just made it the human level, and we're able to remain curious, because a lot of times the identities cause us to be fearful, or to think we're going to be judged, or be selective in how much we share. And so if it allows us to remain curious and to explore in service of the client, is how I like to think of it.
Remain curious, yes. And I would even add here, remain curious about ourselves too, right? It's not just curious about the client, remain curious about ourselves. What is making me have this response? Oh, the client said this, and all of a sudden it connected me to an experience that I had. Or all of a sudden the client said something, and this is one of my buttons too, right? All of this, it's me. Will this be helpful to introducing the coaching conversation? There is no right or wrong here. Maybe by introducing that normalizes for the client, and then the client says, "Oh yeah, my coach feels the same way," and that's okay. So then it frees them to explore that a little bit more clearly without the judgment, right? And I have a partner that has the same experience and is walking this journey with me. What a gift that can be. That can be, right? And I say can be because there may be moments that cannot be. And it will be the experience, it will be the listening, it will be the presence that will guide us into how far can I go to see the client's response, to see how we are building trust and safety, and to see what is appropriate for the client in that particular moment.
Has anybody ever gotten this one? Well, you're a coach. You probably got it all together. That your clients actually say it out loud, that they perceive you that way. How do you handle something like that? I'm curious. How you
Simple, a
respond.
simple yes is fine, Amy. Yes.
Yes, sir, you are correct.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think I would say I have a coach too.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, those are good.
Raise my beer at 10 a.m. and say you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, like that even better, Joe. Here's to us. Yeah, I get that, and then I get it from coaches too, because I'm a master certified coach, so I must be from the top of the world, right? And I think there's just something that is so empowering when anybody reveals, like, yeah, I'm a hot mess too, because I'm human. And I think what it does is it shuts that inner critic up that is there going, don't let him see that. Don't let her see this. And we've all got that little voice going on inside of us. And I think that when we show our humanness, when we reveal ourselves in that way, when we open the kimono, it quiets that voice for the other person, whether it's a client, another human being, or whatever it is. That we all perceive everybody else has it together, and that somehow we're all just a mess sometimes. And given, the context of, or the situation. And I think whenever we can support one another in that and say, yeah, I've got real messy stuff too, that I'm working on. And I think that makes so much of a difference. And I think that it does take courage to do that, because let me tell you, it's a lot cooler sitting in where David suggested. Yes, you are correct. I am the guru of having it all together. And it's much easier to sit there than it is to open your kimono and to say, no, that's not true. Cindy, go ahead.
So there was a time where I thought I was going to stop coaching because I thought I didn't have it all together. And I didn't, because I was involved in some real family stuff. But what I realized was, with that, I also gained so much experience that many other people have never had the opportunity to have. But it allows me to really be compassionate and empathetic and sympathetic. So that's the flip side of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And thank goodness you didn't leave.
Thank you.
The world is a better place, Cindy, because you're
100%. Yes. I am, it's interesting because and I've had quite a few times when a client or a mentee says, you're a master certified coach, or you're a coach, you should be put together. What comes up for me, it's so interesting, is like, what am I doing that makes this person have that perception? How am I showing up? What is it that I can do here to demonstrate, or what can I tweak here to demonstrate to this person that I'm just another human being, just like they are, in the same journey that they are, with the same struggles that they are. And we are just here as human beings walking this journey together. It just so happens that I am an expert in a process, in a framework of a coaching conversation to support them in having this space to explore. That's the only difference. The rest is I'm just like them, just like they are. This is so powerful. So that is the question that comes up for me. What is that I'm doing that is making this person have this perception of me? What are the masks that I'm wearing that I need to let go of, so that I can show up naked in front of my client, really open, so that we can really make a connection. John.
I was just going to say, I don't, in answer to your question, I don't think it has to do with, it's less likely to have to do with a mask that you're wearing, and more likely to do with the fact that you're successfully setting a consistent space for a coaching conversation, And they, speaking from personal experience, are bringing their stuff to you, and it's all, it's about them. That's the way it's supposed to be. So I'm not sure I think the default, I think, would be that as a coach, if we focus on, setting the space successfully, calming things, bringing the calm that comes with that space, and the availability to just be there for the conversation. I think that's 90% of it. And one thing that's been coming back to me here as this conversation is going on is, we're talking about making it personal, but we really need to focus most of the time on keeping the personal out, because particularly as you get to know a client, it's so easy to go the other way.
Yeah, again, going back to the beginning of the conversation, the spotlight is always on the client, right? And if I am going to disclose information, which is not necessarily what we're talking about here, we're talking about this sense of openness that does not necessarily is correlated to sharing a piece of information. If we are going to do that, is to the service of that individual, not of me. I am not here. However, there is this perception, right? And I think that there is even like because I am the professional, because people hired me, because I think that traditionally there is this concept of I'm going to hire this individual because I have something that I want to explore. And oftentimes to this day, people still hire coaches because they feel that they need to fix something. So I'm going to hire this person that is more experienced. So there is this perception, this hierarchical perception that may come inherently because of the initial connection. What can I do to dismantle that hierarchical perception? Or what am I doing that is emphasizing the hierarchical expectation? And how can I relate to my client human to human so that there is a space for them to feel even more comfortable in the exploration? Cindy.
So as you and John were talking, what came to mind for me was trust. And so it's not about friendship or staying in a lane. It is somewhat that professional space, but being able to provide this space for them where they do feel that they can trust you and you can have that back and forth. I think that is a big part of all of what we're talking about.
100%. Noelle.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, as I think about what John was saying, I had a client, probably one of the longest I've ever coached, and which means she started with me when I was extremely raw. And I'm a rule follower, so I followed all the rules. And we had a great coaching relationship. But I will tell you, the minute that I showed a little bit more vulnerability, that relationship completely changed. And I mean, she said to me, I thought you had it all together. I was trying to emulate what I thought you existed as. And you have no idea how incredible it is to know that you are human like me. Even though I knew that, I needed to hear it. And since that day, our coaching relationship is different. And so I'll agree with everybody, but say there's extreme value to finding that road where you're not just following the rules. You're not just keeping it personal. You're not just, and I experienced it in this client, man, what is happening now is incredible. So if I can give anybody take the risk, take the risk.
And Noelle, I would say that is following the rules. Remember, competency
totally.
4.6 is
100%.
asking us to do that.
Right, 100%. I only say that because, I mean, I don't know, I speak for myself and nobody else, right? But you evolve as a coach from when, I mean, you hope, right? From when the day you start until, you know, as you continue. And I think what I mean by that really only is I was trying to zip up a little too much, you know what I mean? Too, and so I don't know, that experience helps anybody. It's worth it.
And that is the process. That is the process of us exploring. That's the process. One thing that, and I'm mindful of time here, and I wanted to just share it, this idea of how able are we to be open to ourselves, right? This has a lot to do with that, this idea, like, do I have the courage to show up to another individual? Do I have the courage to show up to myself? Because when I have the courage to show up for myself, it's so much easier to show up to the world. And David raised his hand, but before David raises his hand, I have to mention to you, we do not have Prime Hour in December traditionally, and we will not have Prime Hour in December. Our next Prime Hour is in the new year. Can you believe that I'm saying this? So the next Prime Hour is January 7. So we are going to meet at that time. Don't forget that we have open registration for our level 1 and level 2 programs now, and we are in the short period of early bird. So if you are interested in joining us for our program, or if you know someone that is interested in joining our program, please let us know, and we are going to support them. It would be a pleasure to have you or them in our cohort next year. Don't forget to subscribe to Prime Space. All of this that we shared here today is one of the episodes that I'm talking about in Prime Space. So please subscribe to Prime Space. You can find in anywhere that you listen to your podcast, and share with me. Let me know, what do you think? Do you have any topics that you would like me to address during Prime Space? Would you like to come and be a guest at Prime Space? So I would love to have you there as well. Okay.
Is that like a cheat sheet? You have all the answers to all the questions that you asked?
Exactly.
Okay. If only I had known that earlier.
Fabulous. What are final words here before we go?
Authentic.
Authentic. Yes. Other words.
Balance.
Balance.
Courage.
Courage.
Trust.
Trust.
Intention.
Intention. Yes, yes, yes.
Appreciation.
Appreciation. Thank you for that. So coaches, thank you so much for this wonderful hour. We'll be back here on January 7th for Prime Hour, but Amy and I are here all the time. So anytime you want to connect with us, we never leave. We're here. Zoom sitting in this place 24/7. So share with us, connect with us, and it's a joy to see your smile. And I will see you in December for another Prime Hour. Take good care, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
January.
January.
Thank you.